Hello YouTube! Before we start the video, a quick warning. I'm going to be especially French in this segment. So for those of you who have a French phobia of sorts, you better skip this one because it's going to be tough to handle. But for the rest, let me put you back in the loop. So roughly 3 weeks ago, I released a video called Powerbuilding is an Abomination. And in that video, I detailed the reasons why I believe that this specific method of training is subpar for hypertrophy in particular. And unsurprisingly, this triggered a lot of reactions. But not of the type I was expecting. I was expecting people, power builders, to come out with measured responses, maybe even pissed off responses, that's absolutely fine, or they explain why I was wrong, why my take was incorrect, why my arguments were not properly formed, etc., etc. But instead of getting that, I got a bunch of people who apparently got very upset with me to the point that I sort of suspect that many of them never actually watched the video because for my particular standards, my French standards, that video was very reasonable. I never insulted anyone. I never called out anyone by name. It was simple argument after argument. And yet, you would have thought that I insulted these people's mothers with, the type of reaction that I got. That eventually snowballed into a form of drama because I have a bunch of people now who are after my ass because apparently I am trying to say that they're all idiots because they follow power building. Which was not what I was trying to do at all, but it's the situation we have to deal with. And this doesn't necessarily surprise me too much. I knew that some people, some power builders, quote unquote, were going to just look at the title of my video and then disregard it. That's 95% of YouTube fitness. Most of the comments that I get and that we all get on this platform are people who tell us, oh, you're stupid or you're wrong, but they never include any arguments. So we don't ever improve because these people refuse to provide us with the reason why we're so stupid. Imagine if in school you had a book review to present in front of the class and you showed up and you based your entire expose off of the title of the book. You'd get a 0, rightfully. Well, it's the same here, you get a 0. But that's just the nature of the game. That's just the nature of making videos on YouTube. So I accept that. What I don't accept, however, is when influencers work like this. People who are supposedly smart and who are supposed to put in the work, who for some reason also thought it was a good idea to criticize my video without actually watching it. And this is when I started to get tagged on a bunch of posts and seeing a bunch of videos pop out where I would watch them, I'm doing my homework, and I'd think, okay, either you did not watch my video or you are willfully misrepresenting me to paint me as someone that I'm not or to not have to face my argument. And this is what triggers this segment because I am no bitch. I'm not going to let people lie about what I say or my methods. I am going to fire back. I'm French, right? Tu joues avec moi, je vais t'enculer, mon frère. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. So, let's begin with the person who, quote unquote, started this entire thing. It's an IG page run by a guy named Milo Wolf. I had no idea who the guy was. I had no preconceived notion about this individual. And he made a meme about my video. And you know me, I love memes so much because they're usually so intelligent. So the meme I'm going to put on your screens right now was the typical soy boy versus Chad meme, where you have a character that looks like a soy boy, say something stupid, and then you have the Chad say the opposite. And of course, it's a way to present the first one as an idiot and the second as someone who is smart, who is badass, etc., etc. I've been seeing these memes for years. I've participated in the past. I'm not going to pretend that I'm offended or that it's wrong. It's just the nature of the game. And if you look at the meme, of course, I am the soy jack in the meme. That, to me, is a bit of an issue first and foremost because, one, I think it's discrimination. I think I'm casted as the soy boy and soy jack because I have glasses and I'm going to sue you for it because I did not choose that. It's a handicap, so you better watch your ass. And secondly, I'm not a soy jack, I'm a chud. How could you not see it? There's a clear difference. Science-based lifters are soy jacks. That has always been established as a truth. And if you're not happy with me saying that, sorry, I don't make the rules. Second problem, the meme includes none of my arguments. Meaning that the guy made a meme with my fucking thumbnail, so it's about me, but then he just puts up arguments within the meme that don't exist in the video. Or if they exist, they're reducted to the point that they look like caricatures of what I would say. And again, you could tell me, well, that's a meme. It's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to make fun of the opponent. And I don't disagree with that, but that's not what the goal of that meme was. The goal wasn't to make a joke. The goal was to contradict my arguments by presenting them as stupid without actually citing any of my arguments. And even worse, the quote-unquote arguments that are on the Chad's side are actually things that I say in the video. So how does that make any sense? Especially when it comes from someone who claims to be science-based. Aren't these people supposed to float above the rest of us? Aren't they supposed to be super reasonable? What the fuck is this? And this weird meme war that is now prevalent on YouTube Fitness and Instagram Fitness in particular is for some reason pushed and promoted by these types. It is these types first and foremost who make these. So on one hand, you have a PhD and you're super intelligent, and on the other, you cannot formulate an argument by yourself. You have to rely on memes, and not just any memes, memes that misrepresent your opponent on purpose to paint them as more stupid than they are. And to that, some of you might tell me that it's part for the course, because people who are science-based are usually those who are too stupid to make up their own meaning, so instead they have to rely on studies, and between studies and memes, since they understand neither, there's not much of a difference. I don't disagree. But it doesn't stop there. The hypocrisy continues. So, to go with that meme, he also, that Milo guy, included a wall of text. And I could sum it up as follows. This is a direct quotation from him. It's perfectly fine to train a certain way because you enjoy it more, despite what some of the optimal bros might say. You do not need to pursue the optimization of muscle growth or strength if that's not what you enjoy. Likewise, if you're only interested in size or strength, you'd be best off using a pure hypertrophy or strength program. Now, if you haven't watched my video, you could think, well, that is reasonable, he's right, and I agree with you. The issue is that I never, ever try to stand against this. If anything, it's exactly what I say in my video. So the guy made a meme painting me as a fucking idiot, then he puts a paragraph next to it where he essentially says exactly what I said, namely that it's perfectly fine to train for power building, but that this method isn't the best for pure hypertrophy, and that if your goal is aesthetics, you'd be better off following a bodybuilding program instead. So here, we are faced with one or two scenarios. Either he indeed did not watch my video, so someone who has a PhD based an entire argument around a fucking YouTube title, or two, he did watch the video, but he decided that because he needed me to be stupid for his argument to work, he simply decided to misrepresent my points in order to look good in the eye of his audience. And I find this especially hypocritical, considering that from what I've seen of his page, this person, this Milo Wolf, is a glass half full, glass half empty guy. So he's trying to be as reasonable as possible on every topic. He's trying to find a middle ground. And that's a fine approach. It's something that I've always preached. You want nuance and you want to be specific in the information that you give. But the issue is that if you look at the type of topics that he's trying to push back against, so stuff like fatigue, people who are obsessed with fatigue and afraid of overtraining, people who dismiss certain lifts because they have a bad stimulus to fatigue ratio, people who obsess over optimal training, who exactly promoted that? Who exactly put these things in people's head that then had them terrified of training the wrong way? It wasn't me. It wasn't the rest of the natural community, it was you guys. It's the science-based crowd that started the fear-mongering, that made people think that it was possible to train for no gains, that they had to focus on things that are completely fucking irrelevant. So you start a fire, and then you wait a bit, and you come around and you just put it out, and then you expect people to give you praise for it? But that doesn't stop there. He's also going the extra step of now trying to accuse me of doing what people like him have been doing, which again, if he had just checked my page just once, would have revealed to him that this makes no sense, because I've been extremely vocal about science-based training leading to paralysis by analysis, and also that the optimal training thing was a meme and that people had to move away from that. But of course, it's not surprising considering that he's also the type of person who relies on memes instead of arguments. A meme, by the way, that he didn't tag me on. You used my thumbnail. You know you're talking about me. Tag me. What are you afraid of? That I'm going to appear in your house and deadlift you? Which largely connects with a pattern of cowardice that I notice very often in this new breed of enlightened influencers. You know, these are people who, regardless of the subject, are always right because they simply refuse to take a position. And they call it nuance. But that's not nuance. That's fence seating. I find it ridiculous to preach a live and let live type of mentality when your entire business as a fitness influencer relies on you telling people what does and doesn't work. I mean, we all understand that people will do whatever they want and that you should follow what you enjoy. But if your job is just to go in the same direction, what exactly is your utility? If you're just going to be a yes man and say, oh yeah, do what you want, bro, okay, then why would I listen to you? Why would I tune in if you're not going to challenge me? It is completely nonsensical. And so trying to counter my video by saying it doesn't matter as long as you enjoy it is not an argument. It's just an attempt at shutting down discourse. Because of course, your enjoyment trumps what I believe. Who gives a fuck what I believe? If you like doing what you do, keep doing it. But if we're all going to follow that mindset, why do we have YouTube channels? Why do we have Instagram pages? It's to offer people an opinion that they might dislike but might be necessary for their growth. And this is when the difference between nuance, which my original video was full of, and not having a fucking spine is offering arguments that people can think about for themselves is called nuance. Refusing to do so and relying on ad hominems and memes and just telling people to follow their hearts is the opposite. It just means that you have no spine. And unfortunately, this level of hypocrisy also extends to the audience because looking at the comments I received and things across platforms, I've noticed that many people were upset at me for the wrong reason. They were never upset at me for my arguments. From all of the comments I've seen, I've never saw people actually pointing out things I said and then trying to come after this saying, oh, well, you say, for example, that training for 1 rep max is bad for hypertrophy. I disagree. No, they never did that. Instead, they were pissed at the way I was saying things. And that's already an issue. If you have to focus on form instead of the actual content of what I say, it's because you're literally grasping at straws. But the one argument focused on form that I saw come back the most was that I was trying to force what I think onto others. So first off, I don't have that power. I do not have the power through your screen to force you to do things you don't want to do. So that's already weird. If you enjoy what you do and you believe in the method, whatever a French kid has to say about it should make no difference. This already points to me as a proof that you're not quite certain about what you're following, and so when someone questions it, you get upset. But secondly, isn't this also the point of YouTube Fitness? I mean, as I said previously, what is the point of this channel or any channel if I just repeat what you already know or I repeat what you want to hear? Shouldn't we instead share what we think works best with everyone, people who share the same passion, even if it ends up challenging what you already believe? What exactly is the point of listening to people who think exactly like you do and who never push you out of your comfort zone? You watching right now, don't you want us to challenge your beliefs? Well, apparently, from the reactions I got, a lot of people don't, and I'm not surprised. Because when you follow that type of influencer who foster this us versus them mentality, you end up existing in constant echo chambers where you essentially just hear your own opinions echoed back at you. But the problem is that there is no growth in this. It's just going to turn you into the type of person who becomes allergic to dissenting voices. The worst thing being that you're essentially being manipulated by people who misrepresent their opponents, meaning that you might be, at the end of the day, missing out on valuable information that could down the line be much more beneficial than whatever you're being fed in that echo chamber. And this is also what motivated me to make this video. I found it incredible that I ended up being accused of being dogmatic by people who didn't like the fact that I criticized our training method. That's dogmatism. You don't like when your mental structure is being challenged by an outside source. Me offering arguments is not dogmatic. It's actually the opposite because you can actually criticize my arguments. But I understand that critical thinking is a lost art nowadays, so let me give you 3 ways to respond to an argument. The first one is you agree with the argument, so there's nothing to do or nothing to say. The second is you disagree, but you don't give a fuck. And this includes a lot of the people who, quote unquote, power build, like it, and don't want to change. That's fine. I've never tried to come after your toys. I never tried to break away your fun. You're an adult. You do what you want. You don't have to listen to me if you don't want to. And then 3, the people who disagree and think that I'm wrong, which is also perfectly fine. I never claim to be correct. I believe that I'm correct because I only share information I'm confident in. But you might disagree, in which case what you do is you quote the point where you disagree and you destroy it. You break it down using logic. But the issue is that the people who did not like my video didn't do that. So instead, they went for the 4th option, which is also the option that this Milo guy took, which is to simply misrepresent my argument and make fun of a strawman. Because whatever was in that meme was a strawman. And a lot of the videos that I saw trying to argue my points didn't actually do that because they failed to cite or mention any of my points. Which is concerning because the video is 24 minutes long. There's plenty of material here. You don't have to make shit up to paint me as an idiot. You can literally just listen to what I say. It would be much, much faster. But this also allows me to connect to the topic of strawman in particular, because this is also an accusation I got a lot. People said that I was arguing against a strawman of my own making. That essentially I made up a version of Powerbuilding that didn't exist, that no one agreed with and no one followed. Therefore, reminder, here is the definition of Powerbuilding I based my video on. A training method that attempts to mix size and strength by focusing on specific compound movements, namely the big 3, and completing the program with high volume isolation. I based that definition of actual Powerbuilding websites and Powerbuilding influencers who included it in their programs. So if you want to go after someone, you go after them. But let's say you disagree and you say, well, this is not Powerbuilding at all. Okay, great. Then in that case, what you do is you offer a more precise definition. But what you don't do is you don't just wave off all of my arguments as invalid simply because I didn't somehow manage to match the exact definition of Powerbuilding that exists in your head. Because if we work like this, how would we function as a fucking species? Everyone has their own definition of everything in their head. The existence of language allows us to agree on common shared definitions so that we can understand the word. So in reality, the strawman fallacy is in itself a fallacy. It's a shitty cop-out method that people use when they don't want to have to answer to your arguments and they just want to paint you as unreasonable. And to me, nothing could be more lame than this, because it proves again that you have no faith in your own methods, to the point that you refuse to define them, because you know that if you actually define them, then they would become a solid concept and then they could be criticized. So keeping it loose and keeping it fluid and saying, well, it's not exactly that, is just weakness, which is again something that I saw a lot with power builders, where if someone follows power building and it fails, they have a shit physique, they get injured, they don't get what they want from it, then it wasn't real power building. But if it succeeds and they get massive, suddenly it was. So if it works, it's power building. If it fails, it's not. Which I hope you will agree is extremely childish and not something that adults should do. So, since reducing the entire discussion to semantics only leads to an agree to disagree position, let's instead pull examples from real life. So I say that power building is an underwhelming Frankenstein that attempts to mix size and strength in a way that results in subpar physiques. That's a claim, okay? It's not based on anything yet. Let us see if it applies to the two most popular power building programs out there, based again on the number of people who run them. These two programs are Kaizen by Omar Izov and Powerbuilding by Jeff Nippard, the two most popular. By observing these programs, which are real and tangible, we can determine if what I say about Powerbuilding is true or it's just something I made up in my head. So let's start with Kaizen. Kaizen is introduced as follows. What you need is the periodization of a powerlifting program with a lot of the training principles of a bodybuilding program. On some days, you will train like a powerlifter, and on other days, you will train like a bodybuilder. Our program is designed to maximize strength and hypertrophy. Maximize. All of us share the exact same goal of not only lifting heavy shit, but also looking badass while doing it. Okay, this sounds eerily close to my definition of powerbuilding. Okay, the fact that people who promote it tell you you'll get the best of both worlds, which also connects to what Milo said in his argument. All right, now let's look at the actual program. So, you separate your training between strength days and size days. On the strength days, you'll do things like deficit deadlifts, squat, bench, and stiff leg deadlifts, all on the same day. This is a strength day. It is not my lane. I'm not going to tell you whether this works or not for strength. I can tell you for a fact that for hypertrophy, this is bad. Okay, I hope no one is going to try to argue with me on this one. Let's then look at the bodybuilding days, because this is what's interesting, right? Maybe the strength days are not good for size, but they don't claim to be. So what exactly are those size days? Well, first and foremost, they include no ab isolation, no neck isolation, no forearm isolation. So you have three muscle groups, one of them, which is key, the abs, that is just being ignored. I wonder why. Is it maybe because the people who made this program have a powerlifting mindset, meaning that they believe that compound movements are enough for abs? I personally perceive it as such. Now, there's actually 3 sets of planks on one of the strength days, which is great because it follows 3 lower body movements. So after all of this isometric contraction, you get even more isometric contraction in a fatigued state. I'm certain that this will result in a six-pack. It's totally not going to result in people down the line who have shitty abs and who then blame their genetics. No, of course it's not going to do that. Let's continue. So since the program follows periodization, your percentage on the compounds changes throughout the week. That is standard, and I don't criticize that because it's not my lane again. But surprisingly, the rest of the program is not affected by it, meaning that you only periodize the lifts that matter, and then the rest, the bodybuilding shit, doesn't change. It stays the same, so you're stuck doing 2 sets per exercise of either 12 or 15 reps with no room to grow, no room to manipulate volume or intensity. So essentially, what I understand from this is the following message. The big 3 and compound movements and the things that work as accessories for them are important, should be focused on and should be programmed, and the rest, we don't care about the rest. The rest, you just get a pump. Get a pump. It'll maximize growth. Sure, 2 sets of fucking random curls will maximize growth. Absolutely. But you know what's funny? It aligns exactly with what I said in my first video. That powerbuilding is essentially powerlifting plus curls. Because this program is powerlifting plus random days where you chase the pump. And you might disagree with that. You can, it's an argument. But I personally think that this is not a good way to train for hypertrophy. Now, let's look at Jeff Nippard's powerbuilding program, which is the most popular powerbuilding program on the internet, okay? Here is a quote from the introduction. Because one of the main objectives of this program is to increase strength on the big 3, if you're unable to perform any of them for whatever reason, this may not be the program for you. That seems to point towards me being right again, meaning that powerbuilding centers around certain compound movements that might not be the best for hypertrophy, but that you are forced to do. And on this program, there is also no direct ab, neck, and forearm work, but at this point, it's not like it's surprising anymore. And you train biceps and long head once a week with 3 to 4 sets. On the other hand, you train presses every single session with sometimes upwards of 8 sets. And naturally, this makes a lot of sense for someone who is trying to increase their bench press but it doesn't make any sense for someone trying to grow their entire body equally. And this goes out to all of the people who say, well, bodybuilding is just powerlifting plus accessories. No, because if you follow that mindset, you end up with this. What you describe is power building, which is why I say it's a subpar method. Why? Because what accessories are you going to focus on? Since your goal is to press on the big three, it's going to be pressing accessories, squatting accessories, and pulling accessories, which ignore a lot of muscle groups that mean that down the line, the majority of your volume will be directed towards certain part of the body and not others. So if you follow that type of system, it is absolutely correct to say that you will end up with a massive unbalance between your torso and your arms. It's unavoidable, it's math. And unsurprisingly, this is also echoed in reality, because if you look at the majority of people who train following that style, they end up with what I call a spider physique, meaning that they have massive legs, they have legs for day, they have good chest, they have good shoulders. Then you look at the arms and it's like, wow, did you rob the spaghetti factory? What the fuck happened? How did someone end up with quads so big and biceps so small? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because of their training methods. And this goes for Omar Izov. It goes for that Milo guy. I didn't know the guy. And I wasn't surprised when I checked his pictures to see that he had great legs and then he had shitty, underdeveloped arms. And I'm not saying that to be mean, although I would be warranted because he took a shot at me completely unchallenged and unprovoked, but it's just the reality. And it seemed to piss him off because he included that in his meme. He made the Sojak say, oh, you have a spider physique, you have a spider physique. The chud is telling you, you have a spider physique, and it's because of the way you train. Don't get mad at me for saying the truth. I'm trying to help you here. But I want to make clear that this is not my argument. Right? I'm not telling you that just because some power builders have spider physiques, it must mean that the entire system is bad. Because again, that's not relying on what I like to use, which is logic and common sense. Which is the reason why instead I presented to you programs. You can argue with anecdotal evidence based on individuals, but not on programs, because programs produce physiques. And this is why I said also in my previous video, and it was misinterpreted by some people, that ideological purity results in methodological clarity. What I meant is not be an extremist and not be nuanced. What I meant is train for your goals. Follow systems and principles that align with your goals. It's as simple as this. Why is this controversial? And this is also to answer another accusation I received a lot, namely that I was trying to create controversy and using clickbait. So let's be clear here. I think that the reason why many people, power builders, found my video controversial is because they disagree with it. If I made a video called Power Building is the best system in the world, and I said a bunch of random nonsense in it, because it aligns with what they believe, they would have no problem with the video, even though that title is just as controversial. But it goes further than that, because I was also accused of clickbait, which, again, is funny because 2009 code and they want their arguments back. Clickbait, really, in 2023? Yes, I'm clickbaiting. I want you to click on my videos. What do you think is the point of titles? Is to attract your attention. But I don't think I did anything wrong because the title is a perfect description of what is in the video. The quote, power building is an abomination, is even in the video. So I didn't lie to you. You got what you wanted. You didn't like it because I disagreed with you. But you're the one who clicked on a video that disagrees with you. Again, if you don't like to be challenged and you want to live in an echo chamber, why did you click? It's not my responsibility. But also understand one thing. If I just wanted to start controversy to get views, I'd make videos on Sam Sulek. I'd make videos on Zoomers who are very popular. I wouldn't make videos on a training method that no one gives a fuck about. Because I don't know if you've realized or noticed, but powerlifting is out. Like it's a dead flavor. People have moved on. Maybe because they've realized it's not that great. And also maybe because people just want something new and something fresh. And it's proven by the fact that the majority of power building channels are dead. They are either dead or they're rebranded. They're rebranded to what? Bodybuilding. We'll point to that later, but it also shadows me how hypocritical some of these people are who came after me when they are themselves now moving away from power building because they've realized either that, again, it's not a sound system, or that it actually is not something that is going to get them clicks and get them views. And this is when we finally move on to the other boys on my naughty list, because naturally, that hilarious meme that Milo made had all of the power builders coming out of the woodwork to take a cheap shot at me in the comments. Of course, they would never post a comment under my video trying to criticize my arguments or, I don't know, make a response. No, it's much easier to shit on me on a post where I'm not even tagged. How brave of you motherfuckers. So let's start with Lane Norton, who states, also, people who worry about this, also, you don't need two alsos, Lane, typically don't even train hard, lol. Top tier argument. So essentially what this boils down to, if I were to translate it, is the only way to train hard is to do the big three. Anyone who refuses to do bench, squat, and deadlift trains like a pussy. Super original. It's not like I haven't heard this for the past 10 fucking years by people with a gut who can barely breathe. I mean, this is not an argument. It's an attempt at shutting down arguments by calling the people that you disagree with pussies. And again, everyone does it. The mimification of YouTube fitness and Instagram fitness is also this, is the fact that now, instead of engaging like adults respectfully using arguments in our brains, no, we just shut down the other guy by saying, oh, you don't train hard. So thank you very much, Lane, for your participation. We'll be sure to let you know if we need to decide if eating a pound of apple is healthier than eating a pound of candy. But I still want to spend some time on this obsession that Powerbuilding has with the big three. Because as I said in my previous video, it's not surprising, it's in the name, Powerbuilding. So naturally, you're going to want to bench, squat, and deadlift. Something that I've questioned, however, is why? And don't tell me, oh, it's because it's fun. Okay, great. That's not an argument. If you like it, you like it. What I question is, are these movements the best for a program aiming to maximize both strength and hypertrophy? And I think that they're not. I really do think that many people do these movements because they never actually stop to think for a second that other compounds could be better suited. To the point where if powerlifting tested using the dips, the good mornings, and the front squats, all of you training for Powerbuilding would go around asking each other, hey, how much do you dip? And that to me also points to the fact that all of this is just an historical construct. You are the fruit of a history that you understand nothing about, and therefore you just follow blindly. Don't get mad at me because I try to get you to question what you do in the gym, because it is this level of dogmatism that has led to a lot of misinformation being thrown around for the domain of hypertrophy. For example, the fact that someone like Milo is going to preach Powerbuilding through means like focusing on the basics. But what exactly does that mean, focusing on the basics? Well, in these people's mouth, it means the big three. But why is the big three exactly? Who decided that the basics must be bench, squat, and deadlift? Why can't other compound movements replace them more advantageously? I think that it's again simply because of dogma. And this dogma then gave birth to the lie of the base strength, which has a bunch of people who don't give a fuck about powerlifting running powerlifting programs because they've been told, oh, before doing bodybuilding, you need base strength. Lies, and manipulation. That is not true. Your strength will grow on a bodybuilding program. Why would you need to build a base? That is nonsensical. It's the type of advice that just gets people to waste years on programs that are not optimal for what they truly desire. And then it snowballed out of control into strength standards that some people still follow to this day, thinking they're size standards when they're based on nothing again but dogma. But understand that this obsession over strength that was pushed and bred into people by methods such as Powerbuilding can result in difficulties down the line. Am I questioning your passion for strength? No, it's not my place. If you love strength, love strength. I, as a bodybuilder, I'm only here to separate strength from size. Of course they're linked. Of course they're going to be correlated to a degree, and that is what I'm arguing today with this video and with the topic of Powerbuilding in general. But let's move on. Let's look at another name on my naughty list. Let's look at Jeff Nippard. So, this is what our favorite Canadian, after Alex of course, had to say. Advanced Naturals talking about Powerbuilding being suboptimal. Like bro, you're gonna add a pound of muscle a year if you're lucky regardless. What you want 1.01 pounds instead? Lol, do what you enjoy. So again, thank you very much, Jeff, for this enlightened centrist position of telling people to do what they enjoy. You should just delete your fitness channel if we're just going to tell people that, right? What should they take your advice? They should just do what they enjoy. But I want us to really stop and observe what he said, because essentially what Jeff is telling us is there is no reason to think about your training, because regardless of what you do, you're going to get the same shitty results at the end. And I find this just unprofessional. You have millions of people who listen to you, dude. Do you understand how discouraging this must be for people to read from someone that they look up to have your idol essentially say that past a certain stage, you're essentially training for nothing, so just do whatever the fuck you want, it doesn't matter? Influencers have a duty to provide correct information, or at least information they believe is true, but they're also responsible for providing inspiration. So if you wanted to be a realist about it, you should have become a doctor. That way you could be a coarse asshole and just tell people whatever is on your piece of paper and announce to them that they have ass cancer and are going to die in 2 weeks. That wouldn't make much of a difference at the end of the day, although I would argue that there's still a modicum of decorum that has to be observed. You can't just be an asshole because it's the truth. But the worst thing here is that it's not even the truth at all, because the numbers that he states he just pulled out of his fucking ass. The difference between an optimized approach and a power building approach will not be 0.01%. Where do you get these numbers from? It'd be more like between 20 to 40%. That is more realistic based on what we see, for the simple reason again that power building strictly ignores a large amount of muscle because most of the energy is allocated towards big movers. And since we know that there is such a thing as the law of diminishing return, if you spend a lot of your energy towards the same muscle groups and movement patterns all the time, eventually you get less results than if you had a more general approach to fitness where you train every single muscle group. Which means that after 10 years, if we agree with that, most likely it's not going to be a difference of 0.0 pound of muscle, it's going to be a difference of 5 fucking pounds. And 5 pounds, I'm sorry, but I'm not leaving on the table. I'm taking these 5 pounds, especially if they go to my arms, to my core, to my rear delts, that will make me look like a completely different person. But also, if it doesn't make that much of a difference, then why did Jeff recently come out with a pure bodybuilding program? If there is no difference between power building and bodybuilding like some people claim, why would he then charge people 40 fucking bucks for a brand new program that is apparently better for bodybuilding if his old power building programs that are now available for free are just as good? Could it be maybe that Jeff has realized with time that his focus on things like deloads, on things like cycling the big three is not actually that great because it actually is going to interfere with bodybuilding and hypertrophy training, which is why he now has a program dedicated to it? I mean, it very well could be that this program is great, but if it does end up being great, it only points out to the fact that, yes, there is such a thing as training for strength and training for size, and that something that attempts to reconcile the two is doomed to fail, at least if it is done in the way power building is doing it. And I also want to point out the hypocrisy of someone who centered their entire business model around offering optimal science-based training advice, now trying to embrace an enlightened centrist posture. So you made your popularity off of the fact, and I don't disagree with that you gave top tier information because it was science-based, and now you're trying to turn around and pretend that it's bad, pretend that people who try to be optimal are wasting their time. And we also saw that with Milo. It's this weird split personality of science-based influencers that on one hand will tell you that their methods are the best, backed by studies, super optimal, but they also don't quite want to take that posture, so they're also fence-sitters at the same time. I cannot stand it. It's hypocritical. Either you put your fucking balls on the table and you say, I'm the best and the rest sucks, or you become a hippie and you say, oh, whatever floats your boat, man. You don't do both, right? That's two-faced. But maybe that's part for the course because that's what power building has always been. Power building has always been a marketing tool. Before being an actual methodology, it was simply a way to sell programs. So the fact that people who ran that gimmick wouldn't be able to stay consistent with what they preach afterwards isn't surprising at all. And I know it's something that is going to maybe surprise the newcomers, but anyone who was there when powerbuilding started getting really, really popular knows that it began like this. It began because fitness influencers wanted to attract a wider range of clients. And how do you do that? Well, you do it by claiming that you can do everything. So it was the rise and the birth of programs that were marketed as optimal for size and strength. That way, you could get powerlifters on board and you could get bodybuilders on board. And actually, as I proved previously, that claim was simply fallacious. They lied. Their programs were not the best for size and strength. That was complete fucking bullshit. And the fact that they're trying to walk back that claim now doesn't change the past, because people like me remember. So it makes this entire attempt at trying to flip the script even more pathetic. Because it was power builders who pushed a rigid and dogmatic approach to training on people. It wasn't us. It certainly wasn't me. What people like me, natural bodybuilders, have been trying to do for the past 5 years is undo the wrong, correct the mistakes that you've made, and tell people, hey, we give advice for hypertrophy, we specialize in it. If this is what you want, come to us. And I know I'm repeating myself at this point, but I just find it particularly unjust to be called dogmatic and to be painted as someone who refuses to see nuance when it's the only thing I've done on this fucking channel. This is the crusade I've been on for as long as I can remember. An attempt at getting people what they really want, by telling them what they need to hear and not what is comfortable, by being honest with them. This is something that I think we should all do, but apparently there's still some fucking pushback, even from people who in their own messages include that you should train for what you want. Yes, that is the point. Train for what you want, following methods that actually work. This video is long enough, and I know I could keep ranting about it forever, because I cannot fucking stand hypocrites. So now let's finish with the last name on my naughty list. So at the start of the video, I said that most of the responses that I watched on YouTube and other platforms were very disappointing, because clearly they came from people who didn't even watch my video and cited none of my arguments. But there are exceptions. So for example, Bold Omly Man, Alan Throw, and Basement Bodybuilding all made their own video, which added greatly to the discussion. If you want someone who disagrees with me, you can check out Bold Omly Man. His video is in the description alongside the others. He disagreed for a simple reason, is that he likes strength. So he has love for strength in his heart, and therefore he will present an approach to bodybuilding that is more aligned with this. I've never had any issue with that. If you love strength and you want to get as strong as possible, you think it's cool, okay, it's not my place to tell you it's wrong, and I've never said that. But the good thing with Bold Omly Man is that I believe personally that his approach is as close to pure bodybuilding training as possible. So essentially, if you follow his method, you're bodybuilding. And he himself has stated that he is now bodybuilding. So that's for if you want someone who disagrees. Then we have Basement Bodybuilding, who agreed mostly, but he also added his own points. So he was mostly describing also how obsessing with strength is not a good idea if you want to get bigger. And then we had Alan, who of course was his usual wise self, and he offered a more nuanced perspective, which is very interesting also because it came from someone who trained for strength for 15 years and only recently transitioned into bodybuilding. So he had a lot of good things to say, a lot of very impacting points. However, none of these can be considered response videos because they essentially wrote their own segment. They looked at the title of my video and the theme, what I say in it, and then they ran with it. Their goal was not to prove or not that I was correct. It was not an attempt to actually criticize my work, which is entirely fine. It's one type of response video. The other type is what I just said, where you actually look point by point and you try to either agree or disagree entirely. And this is what GVS did. GVS is the only person who actually made what I would consider to be a response video. And by response video, I really should say paraphrase, because he essentially just repeated everything that I said in a slightly different fashion. Which is why I was extremely confused when I started his video on Powerbuilding, because he opens it by saying that he disagrees with me. But that's sort of the issue. He doesn't. If you want to make an experiment, watch both our videos and write down the arguments. You'll end up with the exact same ones side by side. Which of course you wouldn't know if you only watched his videos, because the only 2 segments of mine he includes in his are segments that make me appear completely unreasonable and dogmatic because they're taken out of context, and on top of that, they conveniently leave out any of my argument, which I don't blame Geoff for. I think it was just an attempt to make the video less redundant since he was just going to repeat my points later anyways. But what I don't appreciate is the attempt at painting me as some sort of bodybuilding extremist who can only think in black and white, because this is what I got from the video. It looks to me like he on purpose tried to make me look bad so as to present himself as more reasonable in order to placate power builders, which is also somewhat understandable. I mean, power builders are a very scary bunch. You know, you get in a fight with one, they punch you with their spaghetti arms, they poke your eye out, it's a whole situation. But hey, at the end of the day, it's all just a big theory, right? I'm certain that Geoff didn't on purpose isolate the only 2 moments of my video where I sound unreasonable out of a 24-minute runtime with dozens of arguments. I'm certain that it's all a big coincidence. That, or GVS is playing 4D chess and he's using me as a scapegoat in order to get in good with the power builders so that he can then go on to say the exact same thing I say and convince them to train for bodybuilding. Which, if that's the case, I'm actually fine with, 100%. Because what matters is the results. I am okay with being crucified and looking like the villain in people's eyes if you end up actually following what your heart truly desires and getting the results that you want. So if this is why he did this, then my hat's off to him. Geoff is truly a mastermind. But let's look at the portions of the videos where he's not simply repeating what I already said. At some point, he says that it's okay to not get optimal. Most people are not competing. And to this, I have a question. Since when did you need to compete to try to be as good as possible? Since when is competition linked with the pursuit of excellence? I mean, do you compete, Geoff? Do I compete? Does Borderman compete? No, we don't. Then why is it okay for us to be obsessed with bodybuilding and try and be as optimal as possible, and then turn around and promote methods that we know are suboptimal to people that follow us and that trust our best judgment? And something else just came into my mind as I was training. If power building is so good for size, why is none of us training following power building? Why is GVS not following a power building method? I mean, he ran Jeff Nippot's program. If it was so effective, surely he would have stayed on that program. But instead, he follows a bodybuilding method. Why? Because it is much more effective. So if we know that, I don't quite understand why we wouldn't also promote that to our audience. Shit, look at Alex, look at Bottomly Man. They used to follow strength-centric methods, but they shifted because they realized that it wasn't as effective as they would have wanted. They became more specific. People like basement bodybuilding, people like me, used to train following power building, and we got poor results from it. And because of that, when we became influencers, we made it our mission to promote methods that would actually help you, the audience, much faster, because I don't see the point in wasting years just to build a base. Again, this point of saying, well, people who get started, it doesn't really matter what they do. I disagree. It matters what they do, which is why in my novice programs, I make sure that I give the option to the lifter to make their own choices, and I skew it towards bodybuilding. Because even if you're just getting started, as long as you know what you want, if from the get-go you know, hey, I'm in this game just for size and because I want aesthetics, then there is absolutely no reason to not follow a method that is already suited for that. GVS says in his video that it's because you can get 95% of your gains using power building anyways. And we already saw that this is a random number that is not rooted in reality. But there's something more shocking about this. And I use the word shocking lightly because it personally pissed me off. So essentially what Geoff was trying to tell you is this. Since you are not going to accomplish much anyways because you are a genetic dead hand or you are lazy, then you might as well do whatever you want without thinking twice about it, because regardless of what you do, it's not like you are going to look good anyways. And I don't agree with that. I think this is a flaw of character and something that I see a lot with influencers. The second they gain some subscribers, they get a little big, it suddenly inflates their ego and they think, oh, well, I'm floating above all of these idiots. I'm much better than them. I'm their god. There's no way they could ever achieve what I've achieved. And to that I say, fucking bogus. What I have, you can have. It's why I have a channel. Because I know for a fact that the majority of you will get as big as me, if not bigger. I'm not special, and the majority of influencers you're following are not special either. Stop letting people belittle you and push you towards methods that are just okay because apparently you had no potential to start with. That's a lie. But unfortunately, it's a lie that a lot of generalist channels end up propagating because they're trying to talk to the greatest number possible. And sadly, the greatest number likes to be told that whatever you do will work and don't worry about it. You don't have to try and be excellent. You can stay mediocre. I'm not like this. This is why I have a problem with Powerbuilding. This is why I have a problem with functional training. Not because I want to tell people what to do, not because I want to force you to do certain things, but simply because I want you to be excellent. And I know that these methods, for the few that are actually interested in actually getting the body of their dream and pushing it as far as possible, will simply result in you plateauing, getting frustrated, and eventually giving up. Which is also where I think some people got confused. Look at the name of the channel. It's natural hypertrophy. I give advice to people who want to look better and get bigger. As such, within this context, yes, power building is an abomination. Yes, functional training is bullshit. Yes, why? Because it doesn't align with my mission, which is to give the best bodybuilding advice I can possibly give. Am I always right? Of course not. No one is always right. But at least I have the decency to not lie to people in order to spare their feelings and to have the biggest audience possible. And I think it's important that we realize and remember that the reason why our new wave of influencers, the noble natties, whatever you want to call us, got so popular so fast is not because we have better genetics, not because we're better, not even because we're more intelligent. It's because we fought against the status quo. We are not afraid to challenge dogma. We are not afraid to challenge systems that we believe were not actually helping people. And this is why I always insisted, and I will always insist on being honest with you and giving you arguments that you can agree with or disagree with. I will never resort to methods that placate you and make you feel better just for the sake of not rocking the boat, just for the sake of not being too controversial. At the end of the day, we're all promoting methods that we believe are optimal, and anyone who says otherwise is either a hypocrite or should stop making videos because they have no utility anymore. So to conclude this video, if you disagree with me, with my take, that's perfectly fine. I welcome it. I love dissenting opinions. The only thing I ask is that you argue my points. So for those of you who struggle with that, they're going to appear on the screen. It's very simple. 1, 2, 3. If you don't think that this is correct, then come at me. And this goes for commenters. It also goes for all of the people I mentioned in this video. So if any of them, Jeff Nippard, Milo, whoever, is interested in a debate about power building, I would be happy to engage them because I think that this is what would actually benefit the community instead of making stupid fucking memes and creating echo chambers where people just end up taking whatever their favorite influencer says at face value, because said influencer creates an environment where, since there's no dissenting opinion, they end up thinking that this opinion must be the correct one. And we're going to finish on that. If you enjoyed this video, you can support this channel on Ko-fi. Unfortunately, ball busting burns a lot of calories, and with the amount of dick kicks I just distributed, the groceries bill for this week is going to go through the roof. You can pledge, you can donate, anything in reality is appreciated and allows me to run this channel. As always, the comment section is open. You can discuss as much as you want. That's it for me today. Thank you for watching and have a good night.